Hi, thanks for coming to my talk on how money is created. I'd like to give you a bit of information on myself first of all. My name's Mick and I'm a mathematician. I've always been a mathematician. I did a maths degree, I was a maths teacher for years, and now I'm doing a PhD in maths. And I think the reason I became a mathematician is because I was one of those really annoying children that wouldn't stop asking questions. No, but how does that work, Mum? But why, Dad? And those questions ended up leading me into the world of maths. But doing this PhD, what I found is that I had quite a lot of time to dedicate to asking some of my own questions. Questions that have been bugging me for a long time. Questions about money. Questions about debt. Now, I first came face to face with debt myself as an 18-year-old in 1997 as I rode Tony's wave of euphoria off to university. And I arrived there and suddenly they're chucking money at me. I've a credit card, Mick. I've an overdraft, Mick. Have a loan, Mick. That's brilliant. And at the time the question was, this is great, how do I get some more of it? And as I got older, I got a job, I got a mortgage, some more debt. And suddenly I find myself looking around. I look at myself in all this debt. And I look at my friends, they're all in debt too. My family, they're in debt. The government, massively in debt. And suddenly the question becomes, who are we all in debt to? And that's kind of what's drawn me into asking the questions I've been asking during my PhD. And the questions have changed over the time. They've become more interesting. Now these questions are, what is money? That's a deceptively complex question. And maybe more importantly, where does money come from? Who creates money? Who decides where it goes? Now, bear in mind, as I'm delving into these answers and questions, as I stumble across the truth, at first I didn't believe it. And it took me a good 6 months after I'd stumbled across the truth to convince myself it was true. I've got a naturally sceptical mind. So bear in mind, if you've never come across these questions and answers before, you might find them difficult to get your head around. And it's not because they're complex, it's the opposite. It's because they're very, very simple. Now, I'll just give you a quote from an economist called Galbraith from the 70s. And he said, the process by which money is created is so simple the mind is repelled. Where something so important is concerned, a deeper mystery only seems decent. So what we're going to be facing here is something that's so simple it repels the mind. And it repelled my mind for 6 months. It took me 6 months to convince myself. So if this is the first time you're meeting these questions and answers, I want you to be sceptical. That's what I need from you. I need you to have open but sceptical minds. Because it's only by convincing yourselves of the truth of it that we can work together to demand the changes we need. So where do I start with this mind-repellingly simple process? Let's start with the truth. Let's start with a mind-repellingly simple truth, and then I'll try and convince you of it. So the truth is that 97% of all the money in circulation in the UK, 97% of all the pounds in existence, are debt. They're created by private banks as debt. So 97% of all the money out there is created by private banks for their own profit as debt. And that's the mind-repelling simple truth. They create this money out of thin air. They create it at the flash of the keyboard, at the stroke of a pen. It's created out of nothing. And that simple process leads to many, many, many complex and abhorrent issues. It can explain the current debt crisis. It can explain all the booms and busts that we've experienced in our lifetimes, in our parents' lifetimes, in our grandparents' lifetimes. It explains the housing crisis, social inequality. It explains unemployment. All of these problems that we struggle to deal with as a society have their root cause in the creation of money, isn't it? Now, how do I begin to convince you of that? Well, maybe a good place to start is money itself. So, there's some money. That's a £10 note. I don't have to convince you this is money. If I owed you a tenner and I gave you this, you'd be wild. You'd like, he's paid his debt, I've got a tenner. There's Lizzie's face on the front, smiling at us. We've got the back, oh, we've got Darwin on the back. He's quite an appropriate man to have on the back when looking at the money, actually, because this money is evolved. It's not something that's natural. It certainly doesn't grow on trees, as we're told. It's not something we mine. It's not something we forage. It's not something we hunt. It's something we create. It's a social construct. In itself, this piece of paper is worthless. It has value because we as a society attach value to it. To me, what does it mean? It means the future. It means what I'm able to do in the future. That's what it represents. It represents transactions that I can carry out in the future. It's money. I don't have to convince you of that. What about this though? Sorry. Here we go. A bank statement. My old bank statement from 2009. Halifax. You don't need to see the numbers on it, it's embarrassing. You don't want to see the numbers. But what you can see on there is you can see columns of numbers. There's a money out column. There's a lot of numbers in that one. A money in column. Oh, there's a little tiny entry in that one. And then there's a balance down the side as well. But these are numbers in my bank account. But they're money as well, aren't they? If I owed you money and I transferred some money from my bank account to your bank account, you'd be happy I paid you. Yeah, it's money. Okay? So, we know this is money. We come to believe this is money. In fact, we're much more likely to use this sort of money than that sort of money these days. Think about the transactions you do everyday life. They're nearly always just transferring numbers from one bank account to another. Okay, you might use cash for your little day-to-day transactions, but anything large, your mortgage, your rent, your car, any large purchase, you're not going to go up with your bag of cash. Or else they're going to get suspicious and call the cops. You're going to transfer money from your bank account into their bank account. And that's what most of money is now, it's just numbers flying about on computers. That's all it is. So if we don't see any difference as front-end users of money between this and this, what is the difference? Well, the difference is in how it's created. This money here, this paper money, this cash money, is printed and created debt-free. We could track this very £10 note through its serial number as it passes from one person to another. It's a physical entity that exists. It's created debt-free and never has to be paid back. We could track it as I paid Matt, and he paid somebody else, and they paid somebody else, and they gave it away to somebody else. We could track this very £10 note. It exists for its entire lifetime until the government says that this run of £10 notes is no longer valid and replaces it with a different run of £10 notes. It's debt-free money. This money, however, these numbers in my bank account, they're created as debt. Every single entry, all the cash money which will come on to in a sec, every single entry in your bank account only exists because there's some debt somewhere else to balance it out. Now what gets really scary is this real money, this debt-free money. That's 3% of the money supply. 3% of the money supply is created debt-free for us to use for our social gain. The other 97% is created as debt by private banks with their own profit. So, for the sake of argument, I'm not going to say 97% of it, I'm going to say all. Because if you've got 97% of the next time, it's nearly enough, I think. So for all intents and purposes of this talk, when I refer to all money, what I mean is the 97% of money that's created by private banks.